Okay.
Okay. So welcome to another Who Are We for the Oppenheimers. We've got a exciting Heimer with us, Jay Peterson. So
Hello.
Jay,
Hi, Chris.
uh, how do most people know you?
I'm a librarian. I'm a library consultant with the State Library of Iowa, and I've worked here in Iowa for about 13 years, I think it's been. I've been working with libraries and library development in the state of Iowa. So um, I guess that's how people know me
What
professionally.
does that include when you're consulting on libraries? Like, what do you consult on? Like, what is the average day? What happens?
That's dealing with mostly public libraries, so it's public library um, issues that affect the running and operations of a library. So everything from First Amendment, freedom to read issues, library collection development, policies of running a library, how to deal with patrons, customer service, uh, city funding, budgetary issues. We had a library catch on fire last year. That was a whole thing. Trying to rebuild the library, trying to find a temporary home for a library. Um, so every day is a little different. It's never the same thing twice. So it's been good, fascinating work.
So not, I know we have four questions. We're supposed to get through the questions. Is our theoretical structure? However, I'm actually so in the small town libraries, when you say you're helping them, or you help them with sort of everything from collections to process. I mean, there's got to be a ton of libraries. We've got, I mean, I think we have like, what, 900 communities or something. Like, what?
Yeah, there's 543 libraries right now. It kind of hovers around that level. So it's 543 different libraries with their own library boards. So, very few libraries in Iowa have a like a have branches. Only a few of them have, like, there's one central and a bunch of branches. So they're all kind of like independently operated. So a lot of my job involves like managing the city and library board relationship, because the libraries kind of operate a little bit differently because they have that community board that operates the library. So I don't know if that's what you're trying to get to there, but that is a very unique thing to Iowa, that we have so many individual libraries with different operations. So that's a lot of our job, is dealing with that.
You know, as I said on all these, there's no agenda. I am curious, like, so the mayor's not in charge, no one's in charge. There's actually your own separate little group. So if you got a town of like 300 people, you've got eight of them are in charge, or whatever it is. They're in charge of
Yeah,
that, and you're
sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, and they're supposed to approve what happens in the library and hire a director, and make sure the director's doing their job, and making making a lot of policy decisions. It's a complicated job.
it seems like it has to be changing a lot. I mean, like libraries in general, I'm thinking about the libraries in Des Moines. I think we have a pretty good system. You've got a lot of access for it's everything from internet to, I mean, almost homeless shelter some days. I mean, it's just the number of people that depend on a library for so many things seems interesting. I mean, how is that impacting small towns?
Um, well, we like to talk about public libraries as being an anchor institution in a town. They're like a school or a hospital or even a place of worship, that they're a community hub. They do so many things in that community as kind of a, you know, but one of the roles we're finding, especially now, uh, libraries offer that dependable internet connection for free that maybe they're not getting in their homes. It's a way to bridge that accessibility gap for the internet. The broadband connection speeds in Iowa are um, wildly divergent from town to town, from big to town, small towns and big towns. So that's been a real challenge, in trying to offer good connectivity in, especially right now where the libraries are closed because of the virus. We're encouraging libraries to put, Wi-Fi access out in their parking lots and extend that. And that's problematic in its own right. So there's a lot of unique challenges that are coming right now that it just puts a real focus on what the library was offering to the community and how important it was even before this all came down. And now everybody's scrambling to find an internet connection because, maybe they had access to that at where they worked, or, they just didn't have it at their rural farm home, and so now they're like trying to do all their things from the library that they were doing other places. It especially hits schools hard, that all of a sudden they're having to do schoolwork online that they weren't intending to do. So
really in some of these communities, especially with the school closing, there's probably already kids who needed to be in the library already. Now you can't be in the library. Maybe you're lucky enough to be in the library parking lot. That seems like a major hole, especially in rural Iowa. I mean, we have fiber to every library, don't we? I mean, don't we have a pretty good system in Iowa for access to these governmental buildings already?
the fiber is very, I wouldn't say that's true at all, that there's access to fiber in every library. There's potentially fiber in some areas if they know how to access it. But trying to get them to afford that last mile connection is very difficult. We do have some local providers and some of our local telecoms that do a really great job of providing great bandwidth. But a lot of them are, they're very small towns with very small libraries that are only open 20 hours a week, and they just never saw demand high enough to afford a really great connection. So, if they reach, a kind of low level home broadband, that's about the best we can hope for. 25 megabytes or whatever download, that's about as good as we can expect. Although I have some that have excellent, half a gig connections in their libraries, which is awesome. I would say when I started 10 years ago, that was super rare, and it's getting better, but it's not perfect. So.
Well, I'm sorry for spending a ton of time on question one. We'll pick up the pace here. But so if you could wake up tomorrow, do anything, money, location, experiences, no object at all, like you want to just do anything, what would you do? What would you wake up and do?
I used to work in a medical library, and I was always impressed by, any sort of medical outreach. I thought that would be amazing to do something like that. If I had, the experience and the skills, I would think that'd be a really fascinating, interesting line of work too. I don't know what tropical diseases would be, but that was always kind of a thing. I admired that, Doctors Without Borders sort of thing. I was always wildly impressed by that sort of work from people. But a movie director wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't mind that either. I'd love to work on a movie in some capacity.
You can start directing some Oppenheimer interviews. We're outsourcing as quick as possible. So
that's good.
Okay, so it's either save lives around the world, assuming the disease doesn't come to us, like we're working on now, or a movie director, or I guess movies of people with diseases in foreign countries.
A good documentary about I don't know about it. Yeah, we'll see. That or a archaeologist or marine biologist. I think those are always the one. When you grow up on Jacques Cousteau and that sort of thing, that's and do a little anthropology in school, and you think that would be pretty sweet. I would dig that. Dinosaur bones all day, but librarian
I hear
is.
you don't find it very often.
What?
I hear you don't find the bones very often.
No, no, I think, and in retrospect, I don't know how good I'd be, sitting in the hot sun looking for a vertebra. I wouldn't be great at that. So.
Well, that's what I was saying. If experience or anything else is no object. Yeah.
Right. Or like, if I could, um, you know, I was a really good at linguistics and can do like Mayan languages. That would be pretty sweet. That's always fascinated me. So,
Huh.
you know,
Well, if you could, so besides what you wake up and do with no experience, if you could wake up tomorrow and like three things were different, like what would you change? Like your
the the
Thanos.
the three things questions. Yes. I read a lot about universal basic income. I'm not a Yang Gang person. I think there's some flaws with the Yang Gang approach. I'd like to fix those flaws. I'm a big fan of anything that gets us closer to a floor. We don't need a ceiling, we need a floor. I think that's the message I would want to Thanos snap the world into, would be, you know, uh, uh, universal healthcare at some capacity and some expectation that, you won't be in, complete poverty. You could help break the cycle of poverty. Now, how you get away from that, with rent seeking and all kinds of things, I don't know. I don't have a good answer, but in the theoretical world, I would, a universal basic income of some type would be a big goal. Number one. I would love us to have an easy way to get payloads into orbit. However you do that, with a space elevator, something sweet. I don't know. Giant science fiction fan. I'm all about going to the stars. I'm gigantic fan of that. Colonizing Mars. I don't know. I feel like we need to get off this rock somehow and figure out how to do it. But that's a big picture. It's hard to even go down that road. But I like to think.
A space elevator is in theory going to be 30,000 miles long.
I know it's big, or like the tether. They've had that thing. It's like a tether that comes down, and it's not an elevator, but more like a rope that spins or I don't know. I'm not a physicist. I'm just saying, science fiction wise, sort of realm. Yeah.
My PhD was based on tether-based systems. I guess I don't know if I ever told you this. So it was based on the economic viability of tether-based systems. The answer is no.
No, the answer is no. Yeah, I get that it's hard. Yeah, I appreciate how difficult it is, but I think it's the next frontier is the way to go. However, the final frontier. Big Star Trek fan, always have been. So I like that utopian future. And they don't have they don't have money in Star Trek. They got the UBI going. See, it's all luxury space communism. Hey, that
printed food too.
Yeah, I mean, when you got a replicator, when you're a post want society, that's the goal, man. Post scarcity. That's the term in the science fiction world. That's what Star Trek is.
It seems like we're already should be post scarcity given our production and production potential. It seems amazing we're not post scarcity. Even these like small scarcities, like what you're talking about with the small town libraries, or like what we're seeing in the New York side, Des Moines, and places where we have food deserts and other things you just shouldn't expect.
Right. Yeah. And I think all of us have brought home too, though, supply chain. So that was one of my third things I was actually thinking about, was if you could solve a transportation problem, because I think we can produce things. It's more getting it to where it needs to be. And that's, however you could get that, I think it could solve a lot of problems, because it's one of the things we've learned in this crisis with the epidemic. Their supply chains are really long, and that's fine if nothing breaks up the supply chain. But you have a little hiccup in the giddy up there in the system, and then what do you do? And then you're stuck 3D printing masks, in libraries. It all comes full circle. I mean, that's what libraries are doing right now. So I'm hoping those things get solved, but that would be nice to not depend on a container ship from across the world for every little thing. And I think people are realizing that maybe we should have more production inside each, that's at least on our, on this side of the hemisphere. That would be nice. If, not entirely depending on an ocean going system, but maybe not as grand. It's the space tether, but
well, the space tether 30,000 miles apart is going to be actually farther from the other tethers. If they start touching each other, we've got a real problem. Those would be like the space St. Louis arches.
Yeah, that's what that would be.
60,000 mile trip for 3,000 miles distance.
Wow. Like I'm saying, I don't have the math. I just I know you can't make we don't have the material science to build, they always go like something vaguely about diamonds. That's what they always, it'd be stronger than diamonds. Like, okay, yeah, we don't have this figured out. We're not even.
And I apologize. I sat through multiple meetings about the space elevators. That was actually a really big thing NASA was doing there. They were starting their space elevator contest where they'd take these the long tapes into the desert and try and get the vehicles to go up with laser power. Put the domes on the bottom. You shoot lasers to actually raise them up by heating up the air under them.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, but the laser idea isn't a bad one. That's the one they kick around a lot of, like, well, you can't take if you want to travel between planetary systems or whatever, or inside a solar system, just shoot a laser at a big film and push it with the laser up, from another spot. But then, how do you focus the laser? No one knows any of that stuff. So, but it's fun to think about. I like a solar sail. The solar sails ideas.
Because I don't know if you. Sorry, I didn't mean to get on this divergent piece, but Colin McGinnis was one of my advisors at University of Glasgow who actually wrote the premier text on actually sailing with solar sails.
Oh, fun!
Preeminent, I guess. So,
well,
I'm just too much of a skeptic.
Yeah. I just there's always an appeal to traveling by wind, whether solar or laser or it appeals to humanity, I suppose.
Well, it's funny actually. One of my favorite shows was your recommendation of The Expanse. I still every day keep waiting to think there's another season coming out soon. And sort of like the Seth Meyers A Closer Look. It's almost like the extra year keeps a lot longer and should be. Whereas
Yeah, and it's supposed to get better. I have not read all the books. They are doorstops, but my coworkers read them. He says, yeah, they get better. There's about 10 of the books out, so it's got enough material to go for a while. So, and this last season, he said, was the worst season. Was the worst book. So it can only go up from here, which is nice to know.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't the best season on Earth or.
I mean, but yeah. I can't believe that show even got off the ground. I think it's great. So good job, Sci-Fi, and then Amazon picked it up, and and it's got real physics in it. You can't beat it. Within reason.
Well, no, I literally I have been watching it over from time to time, so I would argue it's a pretty top show.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to have a little MacGuffin in it to give you, um, to make it they add the aliens in and all that kind of stuff, and they kind of mess with the physics, off and on, but you need that conflict, so it works. They do a classy job, I think.
Well, so since you haven't actually gone and tried to put up any space elevators, what is your most innovative failure?
I, I I don't know if I've ever come up with. I always think about my failure where I worked for a day as an assistant to uh, a surveyor, and they shoved me out in the fields uh, of suburban Naperville on all these different lots where they're going to put in houses. And I had no idea what I was doing, and they never gave me the slightest bit of instruction. They never spelled out what I was supposed to do. They just handed me a field manual and said, okay, go with this guy and he's going to read to you all these numbers and you're going to have to write them down and help him out doing this. Oh God. And then the guy brought me back in and he like, well, I can't use any of these numbers. You didn't write them down right. And I go, well, no one gave me any instructions. So to me, that was my failure. That was, I swore myself I'd never get in a position where I was that clueless before I got shoved out into the job. That was the one I quit after a day because I was just like, I felt just like I'd been lied to about about what the job entailed and what I had to do, and I just didn't think it was going to get better, and so I quit. That's not innovative. That's not coming up with something, but it traumatized me towards architects, surveying, building houses, all that, my whole life. So I see a tripod out in the field, and I just get PTSD. So.
Well, I mean, having healthy fear of architects is probably good.
Yeah, I mean, just the thought of it. Our new house going up, just no, thank you, no, thank you. Buy an old house. It's already, has some character. That's what I say. I tried really hard at my, I tried really hard to work with a bunch of other states to try and rehab the. There's a federal program called the E-rate program that a lot of people have heard of in regards to bringing internet to schools. This program specifically is famous for kind of leading to that whole thing where people made fun of Vice President Al Gore for inventing the internet. When he said that, he was kind of talking about how he helped with the E-rate legislation, which was actually a good idea to bring the internet into classrooms and help with the digital divide, because if you're a little bit older like me, you kind of remember that internet was hyper expensive to put in classrooms in the early 90s. So that program has morphed over the years, and I was helping run that program for a good chunk of my time at the library, and I was helping libraries apply for the process, and it's massively complicated process to apply for E-rate, and it's very daunting for rural librarians who are generally not super technically proficient, and they're trying to shoehorn their needs of a little tiny library into this giant federal program. And so we tried to work with all these other states. Well, all these other states had different plans. All of them didn't quite come with the same message. All of them kind of threw into the pile all these recommendations, and they were massively different because one was from California, one was from North Dakota, one was from Alaska. I mean, you can imagine the difference between Alaska's internet problems and California's and North Dakota's. To even Iowa looks absolutely like Manhattan compared to Alaska. I mean, it's just, and when you have to think they're flying between, the towns and plains, there's no roads, and every public library in Alaska is basically attached to the public school because they have one of those in 100 miles, and people are being flown in to go to the school, and then maybe they hit the library, so their internet needs were totally different than what we needed in Iowa and what you needed in Alaska. And it's like geography in the United States, it hurts us every time. It's like, it's so hard to finish that last mile, in those places. And even in a lot of California, everyone thinks, okay, California's got Silicon Valley. Oh man, they have fiber everywhere. Well, that's just in the population centers. You start going to Northern California and all those places, it is a massive problem, and they do not have good connections in those places. So, but that was a big, thing we went out and did, and tried to do broadband mapping and all this kind of stuff. And we did pretty well for our agency. We got more people cross-trained and kind of brought up the awareness of it, but we're still struggling because, once again, they're all these individual libraries, and then you get somebody who knows what they're doing in the E-rate process, and then they retire or they find a better job and they stop doing E-rate at the library, and so we have to start all over again. So that's a big.
So basically you took the last mashup question and broke it up into a pure failure and something that was actually transformatively innovative for the library system. So
yeah, I don't know if it's
you basically innovated around the purpose of the question.
Well, good. Can I do that?
Yeah. Apparently so. There's no rules to this whole thing. So, however, the only rule is I keep promising we're going to get close to 15 minutes. So we are putting a hard stop on the official program with Jay Peterson, who is working with the state library. However, I have like 3 questions as well if you're willing to stay on for an overtime.
Yes.
Okay, well then hard stop is here.